Friday, Baylor College of Medicine and Friends of Baylor. Well, we're right in the middle of all the respiratory viruses, so we'll go through it very quickly. Start with the Texas Epidemic Public Health Institute TEPI data. This is wastewater analysis, covers most of the state. SARS is up a little, flu is still around, adenovirus is up, and Mpox is still around, mostly in Austin and in Houston, but we won't talk about that. Okay, quick report on the update in measles because of what's going on in South Carolina. I always like to show this. Remember, measles is a disease that we eliminated in the United States in 2000 because people got vaccinated. Not anymore. Okay, so last year we had over 2,200 cases. We're already at 416 this year. 2% of those have been hospitalized. Last year was 11%. I'm sure this will rise as we have more and more cases, and we'll get usually 10 to 20%. No deaths so far this year, but look at the spike in weekly cases. Huge number. The yearly measles cases, we're already well on our way to catching last year. I think we'll probably exceed last year. And the big hotspot is South Carolina, where they've had a ton of cases. I mean, just ridiculous. Big outbreak in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I showed this map last week. I love this map. This was developed by researchers at Harvard and the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. It shows by zip code you can look up your measles risk. And so I did it for my zip code, 77006, which is part of Houston. And our vaccination rate is between 70 and 80%, so medium risk. But my grandson is in 27701. His risk, their vaccine rate is between 60 and 70%, so he's got high level risk. So trying to advise my son what to do with his kids. What I'm going to do is recommend they get vaccinated early, even at once the kid hits 6 months, rather than wait for a year, probably get vaccinated. Okay, COVID. Now I want to show this because this shows how useful the wastewater data is. Like I've been mentioning for the last couple of weeks, COVID peaks later than flu. Usually flu's around December peak, then January peaks and starts to go down. COVID, we had a late summer peak in August, and usually you get a second peak in February. So based on that, I would expect that we would continue. My watch is signaling, but whatever. So the early indicators for COVID are test positivity and ED visits, and you can see those are going up. So it looks like we would have the usual February spike. Same thing for severity indicators, which are lagging behind those early indicators. Hospitalizations are going up as expected, and deaths. So these are late after you get infected. These are the consequences of that. But when we look at the wastewater data nationally, surprise, surprise, it is up, but now it's coming down. So I think, based on the wastewater data, we should probably see that COVID, will not really be very severe this February. It should begin to actually wane already. So that's great news. We won't need it. We won't probably have a very severe COVID season. The genetics hasn't really changed. It's still XFG is the predominant. If you look at all the XFG related varieties, 85% of the viruses are XFG. And remember, this is the relatedness tree I like to show. This is Omicron. It's evolved, and as mutations take place, the XFG lineage is this group. The target for this year's vaccine was LP8, which was last year's major variant, and they're close enough related that it should be a very effective vaccine. Okay. Internationally, it's not much different. Remember, the Travelers Program looks at some of the major airports: Seattle, San Francisco, LA, Boston, New York, Dulles, Miami, and Newark, for people who are coming into this country. Collects either nasal swabs, wastewater from planes or from airports. And you can see over time it's begun to, again, like here, it's beginning to fall. So I would say nationally, worldwide, we're likely going to see a very brief COVID season, which is good. Now, internationally, same thing. XFG is the dominant strain, 80%. Okay. So let's talk about flu. So far, influenza has been very, high, but is now beginning to come down. Looks like the CDC estimated 18 million illnesses, 230,000 hospitalizations, and 9,300 deaths from flu this season. You can see positivity is beginning to come down. The influenza A is there in yellow. So it's mostly influenza A. When you do the genotyping, it's mostly H3N2. and a little bit H1N1. Interestingly enough, last year it was all H1N1, flipped to H3N2. This year it's all H3N2, and this is the H3N2 that is a slight genetic drift. It's the K clade, not exactly a match, but close enough that it's still very effective as a vaccine to prevent serious disease. If you look at the percent of outpatient visits just for respiratory illness in general, we had that double peak in 24-25. It looks like in this year it's just coming down. We hope we don't have a second peak. If you look at the data, that's actually influenza, not just respiratory disease, but influenza. Last year there was that double peak, and this year it seems to be coming down progressively. Same thing for hospitalizations. They seem to be coming down steadily, and hopefully it'll stay that way. And mortality was no worse this year than in other years. You can see mortality didn't hit the same peak as last year. That's factored per 100,000. And pediatric deaths were also not as severe as last year. Okay. Now, what's the news out of Washington? So this is the way I describe our current health policy is a head in the sand. So most recently, the chair of the vaccine panel actually recommended that polio and measles should both be treated the same, which is optional. Now, I guess he's never seen people with polio. I mean, this is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. And the other great thing is the U.S. withdrew from the World Health Organization. So that means we will no longer be participating in global influenza surveillance, response systems, all the platforms for monitoring infectious diseases. The influenza season, the genetics we get from looking at the Southern Hemisphere and what goes on in the Asian markets. We're just withdrawing. So we will be we're no longer at the cutting edge of anything. We will be the blunt edge of information. I just cannot believe that people are actually, I'm not going to say that's stupid because that would be an insult. I just can't believe that they are that, whatever. All right. A couple of interesting papers. One that came out in JAMA. Colorectal cancer is no longer a disease of old age was the title, and what they're seeing is an increase of colon cancer in young people under the age of 50. So it's been a remarkable decline in cancer. That's one of the things we've really had, made advances through targeted therapy, CAR T-cell therapy, immune therapy. All these things have been really great. And lung cancer, breast cancer, brain cancer, even leukemia have had some, either some modest to pretty significant declines. But the one exception is colon cancer. So under the age of 50, the colon cancer has increased by 2% or so. So continues to be important for the screening program. We've usually said, wait to start getting screened until you're 50 or 55. Well, now I think their recommendations are going to be screened earlier. Also, a really great paper that came out in Nature Medicine by our own Ben Musher, along with his colleagues, looking at T-cell therapy, having a real great response for pancreatic cancer, which has been notoriously resistant. What they found was that combined with frontline chemotherapy, they had an 84% disease control rate, which is really kind of remarkable. So congratulations to him. Okay. Now, of course, I hope you all got to watch the football games. New England beat Denver in one of the worst games I've ever seen, the Snow Bowl. And, of course, Seattle beat L.A., which was also kind of interesting, good game. But what did you find to be the most interesting thing about all those football games? I'll tell you what it is for me. The most interesting man in the world is back. So Dos Equis has brought back Jonathan Goldsmith, nice Jewish man, as the most interesting man in the world. I don't know if you recall, but he was there for forever, and then 10 years ago, they flipped it and got some young guy to be whatever, and nobody cared about that guy, so they brought Jonathan Goldsmith back to be the most interesting man in the world. And remember, he once cheated death, and death didn't mind. If opportunity knocks and he's not home, opportunity waits. Mosquitoes refuse to bite him purely out of respect because he is the most interesting man in the world. So after 10 years, I'm not sure what they said. He disappeared, and he's back. Anyway, that was the most interesting thing about all the football games is the Dos Equis commercials. Okay, a bunch of shout-outs today. First of all, there were citations for the world's most highly cited scientists. This is very interesting. They look at people who have the most citations across the world, and there's a panel of judges. They also look at ones that have had a huge influence in their field. We had 8 of our faculty members listed in the world's most highly cited scientists. So Bikram Bhaskar, Hashim El-Sarraj, Richard Gibbs, Peter Jones, Sanjay Mathew, Joe Petrosino, Fritz Sedlacek, Jim Versalovic, Nadim Ajami, and Matt Ellis, who were former faculty members, but all were in that top. So congratulations to all of them. It shows you the great science that you're doing, that your colleagues cite you a lot. Also, this is International Laboratory Animal Technician Week. I didn't know there was such a week, but apparently there is. Animal technicians allow us to be able to do all the great work we do in translational science and looking at models, animal models, so we really need them. They're really great at taking care of our animals, so thank you so much for them. And then, of course, I want to recognize all the people who were here as essential personnel during the big freeze. So we had another ice event, cold event. Did we have ice? We didn't have ice. We just cold. It was a really cold event. It was a cold weekend. And apparently we have essential personnel who come and spend the night, make sure that the facility is okay, take care of the security, make sure people get fed, take care of all the animal facilities, all the labs. So thank you for all of you who took the time and effort to make sure we're okay as an institution. We couldn't do this without you, so thank you all so much. Anyway, have a great weekend, and I can't wait to see you next week.